Welcome to the Law Life podcast. I have guest today, Marina Fraigun from the Fraigun Law Group. Hi, Marina. How's it going?
Hi, Shana. It's great. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you on. So Marina is a plaintiff's employment attorney. How long have you been practicing?
26 years.
Wow, that is incredible. So, I have so many questions because every single time I refer a client to you, they come back with the biggest accolades and are just like, I've never really had an attorney like this. I think most people's and clients' experiences with attorneys are usually not so positive for the most part. So I want to talk about, of course, your career, the history. So let's start with bar exam. How many times did you take the bar exam?
Once.
One time. Okay, not surprised. And it was a 3-day bar, right?
It was a 3-day bar.
A 3-day bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on them condensing the exam over the years and making it 2 days?
I think the bar exam should be hard. I think it should be hard. I recognize that there's been some studies done that a 3-day bar disadvantages certain groups, and I've read some stuff about that. I am not knowledgeable enough on the subject to really give an opinion, but I do think that it should be hard to get into the bar. It should be really hard. I think we're making it easy, and I think that doesn't serve anybody, particularly clients. And I think that this kind of ties back to what you and I often talk about, what I talk about when I teach young lawyers, when I talk to all kinds of people. We're here to serve clients, right? We are here to be their sword. In my case, their sword. In other people's cases, their shield. But in my case, their sword. I'm their champion.
Love that.
What my role is. My role is not to just kind of make money and sit in an office on the penthouse suite, right? Yeah. It's to really champion rights. And I take that super seriously, really seriously, even after all the... So I don't think we should be doing anything to make the bar exam easier. I think, on the other hand, if it really is in any way discriminatory and we can confirm that and we can change that to make it more sort of inclusive and allow more diversity, I'm all for that, as long as it's still really hard. It should be really hard.
I completely agree with that. There definitely needs to always be a standard, for sure. And especially in this state where we have almost 16 to 20,000 applicants taking the exam every year, when we compare it to a state like Florida, where I think it's less than 1,000, there's so many applicants from every different walk of life that should have that equal chance to become licensed. Well, we can't just make it easy. But I was curious on your thoughts about that. So you passed the bar your first time. And what year are you licensed? I'm making you go back right now.
So that was a big year in my life. So I was licensed in 97 and I got married the same year. So that's why I got married. Well, I got married 6 months before I took the bar and passed the bar. So I got married at the end of 96. I passed, I took the May bar and then got results at the end of 97. And I worked at that time. I used to work at the American Arbitration Association as a case administrator. And then I met someone on the phone and who became my mentor. His name was Ron Katzman. And he's an attorney here, ironically, on the same corner where I still am, Salvador.
Wow. He's still practicing.
He's not. He retired. But anyway, he became my mentor. He was a general business litigator. And he literally had enough grace and enough love and enough time to teach me. And he really, really taught me old school style, right? Not like the way we do it now, but old school style with red ink on my pleadings and my letters.
Right.
Do it again and do it again. And it's so much better because now I can write a letter so much faster. And so my briefs, I think, are very tight. I'm always getting complimented on.
Yeah. Can we talk about the mentoring? Because I had my dad as my mentor when I was practicing. Now I pretty much only do bar prep. But in the inception of my licensing, almost 15 years ago for me, I practiced with my dad, who's now retired as a construction attorney for almost 45 years. And I don't know what I would have done without that guidance. I would have been so lost because law school trains you on the law. The bar exam trains you on application of the law to some extent. Practice really trains you for the rest. But until you have a motion of, for a demur, right? Until you're dealing with these kinds of documents and going to court if you're a litigator or whatever, type of practice you're in, it's really hard to know what to do. So how do you advise young attorneys to find mentors? Because for me, it was a family member. For you, you got a connection. what about those that are just licensed that have no idea and they maybe want to go out on their own? They're not working for a firm. Any advice there?
So I think we have incredible villages in this city. I don't know, in the state. So we have, I got a job with my mentor like anybody else. I didn't actually have I didn't know anybody. I grew up in Koreatown. I grew up poor. I grew up.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
You grew up in Koreatown?
I grew up in Koreatown where I was literally like the minority. Like,
you're Russian, right?
I'm Ukrainian. Yeah. I was born in Kiev. Yeah. And so like this look, it does, and I had no problems. I had an amazing time. I love Koreatown now. I grew up there. I don't remember having, but my point is that I grew up probably underprivileged. I didn't have any connections coming. My parents were not lawyers and I didn't come in knowing anybody. I just applied for a job and he became my mentor because, and really one of my best friends over the course of my career. My advice to everybody, and I do advise a lot of young lawyers, and have any of your listeners need anything, you can reach out to me. I'll club, whatever.
And she really will respond, by the way, like in lightning bolt time.
Yeah.
Lightning bolt time.
I'm not a big sleeper, as you know. But anyway, I think it's important to get involved, right? The village is not going to come to you. You have to go and get involved. Yeah. We have Los Angeles County Bar Association. We have California Lawyers Association. We have local bars. We have San Fernando Valley Bar Association. We have whatever. Reach out to people. Like, there's so many groups. CLA, California Lawyers Association, has sections. So you can actually, like, if you are interested in a particular section, you can join that section. You can become, like, advise somebody to join the intellectual property section, the privacy. Right. So you can kind of connect with your people who find the same things you find interesting, right? So if you're not interested in being a litigator, you can talk to me, but we're not going to be the same people, right? If you're interested in sitting in an office, writing contracts, that's fine. You got to connect with your people, but get out there and do that. You have to get out there.
I remember one of my first mentors, Jed Wider, who was working at a firm in New York, and I was starting CA bar style. So this is more of like a business setting. I said, how do I get clients to meet people? Just get out there, have a business card, and whoever you meet, give them that card. Have a connection, which is not always easy, especially if you're starting out and you're shy and you're thinking like, who's going to really like, are they going to like me? Not everyone's social, not everyone's personable, but you got to put yourself out there and do your best with it to make those connections. And I love that you said that, create your village and it's not going to come to you. I love that.
You have to do whatever you enjoy. Like I really sort of border, like not anxiety, but I have a little bit of anxiety of going to those like big groups where you're extending in a bar and drinking. Yeah. I'm not drinking with you people, okay? Like I'm not. I'm not. I'm the one that has like a club soda and I'm hanging out. I do better in small groups. So then I tend towards that. I created, as you know, Shana, I created a walking group during COVID. So I walk with a lot of lawyers. I now do a walking group with certain other groups. Like I like to walk. I like to hike. So that's what I do.
You put yourself out there continuously. So you're working at AAA, right? Yeah. And then you get the mentor. And what's your next move? I mean, you're not in employment law yet.
No. So what happened was, it's kind of a my story's kind of really kind of fun, I think. So what happened was I was working at American Arbitration Association. I was in law school. They had me answering like sort of legalese type questions about the rules. And one day this person calls me and she asks me some questions and I start talking to her. And she's like, oh, my husband's a lawyer and he's looking to hire. Are you interested? I was like, yeah. And that's how I got my mentor job, right? It was, I made no money back then, right? But it didn't matter. So he became my mentor and we are still the best of friends. And then what happened was I was at the courthouse and this African-American man came up to me and I don't know why me. I don't know why. I don't know. And, we tell younger lawyers, be careful of the crazies you speak to at the courthouse. But I practice what I preach, right? I always speak to people. I always talk to people, whatever. And he talked to me and he said, I want to sue. And it was like a big corporation, big company in an employment case. And he wanted to sue for race discrimination. And this is like 21 years from ago now, right? 22 years ago now. And I was like, I don't do employment law. I'm a general business litigator. And he goes, yeah, it doesn't matter. I want you. And I was like, why? Wow. And so I met with him in my office in Sherman Oaks. And I was like, I really, I have to be competent to do this, right? Like, I'm not going to just do things. And my mentor at that, Ron, was like, well, let's take a look at it. Anyway, long story short, I took that case, and and I learned everything there was to learn about employment law.
You took the case and you became competent.
Yeah.
So you started learning.
And I consulted with other lawyers during that, people that I just went out and consulted with. And I settled that case for back almost $1 million back then. Right. And
your first employment law case.
It was, I mean, you think of the dollars back then, right? I mean, 20 years ago.
Crazy.
It was crazy. Yeah. So I represented this guy and he was African-American, and his white counterpart, who was sort of a whistleblower. So I represented these two guys, and it was a big case. But the most important thing is I fell in love. I was like, oh my God, this is my life's work. I'm here to represent employees because there's just this power dynamic, and that's me, maybe far beyond what you want to do in this podcast.
No, I want to hear about the power dynamic.
Okay, all right.
If you don't mind. Yeah.
So there's this huge power dynamic differential between the employer and the employee. We have to serve the rights of the employees, because if we don't, they don't have, they're just at a disadvantage, right? Because most people, even lawyers, but most people who are not lawyers, they get a job and they're stuck there because they have to pay the bills. And they get mistreated, and they can't leave because they're not that mobile, and they have families, and they have lives, and they have a mortgage. They don't have very much power, right? Well, there's a lot of power, and depending on the level of employee and their qualifications and things like that, it's very hard for them to empower themselves. So when they come to me, if I take the case, and my percentage of taking cases, as you know, Shana, is very, very low. It's probably 5%.
Is that
maybe.
Because when someone calls you, you can tell right away if it's going to be a case?
Well,
something that's going to be potentially be able to be settled.
So the problem is that most people that call me are mad because they were treated in a way they didn't like. Well, that's not illegal under California law, right? It's not illegal to be an asshole. It's not illegal to bully your employees.
Right. I want to talk about this for a second, because so many employees, right, I can imagine, feel like I was bullied or someone was picking on me. What is really, like, when we're talking about employment cases, which can be broad, right? Because there's wage claims, but mostly what you do is under discrimination.
Well, is that correct? I do a lot of discrimination cases.
Right.
When I teach, I always say, I think that employment cases kind of come in three sort of buckets, right? One is hour, which for those people who don't know, means you weren't paid properly. You didn't get overtime, you didn't get your minimum wage, you somehow were not paid properly, the wage and hour violation. Second bucket is sort of discrimination and harassment, meaning you were treated differently, not because people didn't like you, which is completely legal, but you were treated differently based upon a protected class, right? Race, gender, religion, disability, sexual orientation, pregnancy is a big one. Hair, the Crown Act is new, the way you wear your hair, if it's national origin. Yeah. Religion is a hot topic right now. I'm missing something. But anyway, all those protected classes. So if you're being treated differently or being harassed based on those things, that might be the case. And third is really retaliation, right? And there's obviously a million more categories, but the most of our cases come in those three buckets. And the retaliation means you made a complaint about a violation of law and you were retaliated for it. Meaning you were fired, you were demoted, you were whatever. It doesn't mean that you go complain about your manager because he's a jerk and treating you badly and then you're retaliated against. That's not actionable, right? You have to have complained about a violation of law. So a lot of what I'm doing right now today is, as our population is aging, I think this is my theory, because as our population is aging, I represent a lot of older workers in claims and or disability claims. Because what's happening is as people age, they're getting disabilities, they're not being accommodated, their employer wants them gone. So there's those, and a lot of pregnancy cases.
What are the most topics regarding pregnancy, like not giving pregnant women breaks or literally firing them because they're pregnant?
I'm working on one right now where she went out on leave and she came back and they were like, oh, sorry, your job's not available. We're going to pay you $40,000 a year less. And I was like, you can't
do that. You have to hold the.
You can do that. You got to give her, put her back. if she's not out too long, got to put her back, a comfortable position. And they were like, well, we reorganized. I was like, yeah, they can't do that.
So what are your favorite types of cases to litigate?
I love them all.
Do you have a favorite category?
I do. I love them
You
all.
love them all.
I love that every time somebody comes into my office, I get to learn about this new subject matter I didn't know, or I get to learn about this like real subject matter. Like, for example, I once learned so much about, like, I represented a PhD in retaliation claim having to do with his complaining about animal studies. Well, I had to learn all there was to know about animal studies, stem cell research, and all of that. Like, that's so fun. I love those. I love the pregnancy cases, obviously. I love the aging cases.
So you have a major passion for what you do. It started on with that first case, and it has not stopped, clearly. So you were working in other firms, and then eventually you started your own firm. When did you start the Fraigun Law Group?
After leaving Ron, I had my two babies. Babies are now 18 and 20. Mm-hmm. And I decided I wanted to do something else. And it broke my heart because I had to give notice. It was a whole thing. And I got an offer. Well, I applied for a job with the City Ethics Commission, and I got an offer. And I was like, I can't take this job. This sounds horrible. Like, it was so terrible. And I was, oh my God, I can't sit in this office for the next 30 years of my life. So I didn't take it. And I ended up working for this other attorney in Woodland Hills, where I did 100% plaintiff's employment work. And about, I think it's 13 years ago now, I opened my own firm. And I just was like, I'm done. I want to do what I want. I want to take what I want. I want to not take what I don't want. And not to say that anyone ever dictated to me what I should take or not take, because that's just not who I am. Nobody does that. But I just wanted to follow my own passions. And if I could teach anybody anything, and also I wanted to be there for my kids. And I would have to be, it would be unfair of me to miss that.
Well, I think a lot of moms, right? Because I'm a mom. I mean, I work with the dads, and the dads do a lot. Some dads do more than others, but the moms have a lot of guilt. And so much guilt. And we have the kids, and talk about, because of course on paper, right, and on social media, everyone calls me Superwoman, and I'm like, I couldn't be further from Superwoman. If it's not realistic. I'm doing the best I can to balance it all. Some days I do it pretty well. Other days I'm a hot mess. Talk about the balance. How was that like for you, like throughout all these years, and what's it like now?
Yeah. So my boys are 18 and 20. My 18-year-old, actually, this is college acceptance month for us. It's a very, very stressful time for me.
Right.
Fine. He's fine. But anyway, I think you're so right. I remember when my kids were very little, if they got sick, right? I'd be like, oh, it's because I work. If they if they have a nosebleed, oh, it's because I work. Oh, they got a bad grade. Oh my God, it's because I work. Mm-hmm. Right? It's bringing tears to my eyes now, right? Because all that, like whatever it was. And it's so fun to talk to your kids as they age, and I mean you age, and my son said to me the other day, they were like, because we were all together, and they said, somebody was always here to pick us up. Like, I picked them up probably 90% of the time. So how do you manage that? How does that work? Because you're going to have listeners who are at big firms and are going to say, how do you do that? Well, you make a decision, right? You make a decision, and maybe you do go out on your own, and you realize that your income is not going to be guaranteed. I often talk to women who are brand new lawyers, and they'll be like, I'm at the office for 17 hours a day. My baby doesn't know what I look like. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, but why? Why do you do that? She said, well, that's what my firm requires. And I'm like, okay, but there are other firms.
And the rates of not only depression, alcoholism, suicide going up amongst women in these big law firms, moms especially. I was just reading a story out of England about a mom that was working, a partner in the firm. She was working at big law in the UK and never seeing her kids, 16, 17-hour days. And she ended up becoming an alcoholic and then killing herself. We don't talk enough about this. It needs to be talked about because we always focus on the maternity leave, right? And that we get some time off then. But what about like when you have to say, well, I really want to make my kids play. I really want to make the basketball game. It doesn't seem to be a lot of bending. And then, yeah, you're right. You get stuck in this career. You get stuck in this office and there's bills piling up and there's things that you need to do. And I think a lot of women definitely feel like where do I go from now? Because some of them may not have that entrepreneurial spirit to go and start their own firm. That's really ballsy to do that. Why do you think it's not talked about enough? It's kind of under the rug.
Well, I mean, first of all, because women don't talk enough, right? I mean, like, let's talk about whether women have equality in litigation or whether women have
let's do it.
Equality in law, right? Because we love to talk about, everybody loves to talk about how women are 52% of the graduating classes of law school, but they're not in court.
Isn't that so true? What a good point. Right. So many women going to law school, graduating, but like you go to a courtroom and it's all men in suits.
Exactly. And so I took my associate to a federal courtroom not that long ago, and she goes, "Why is everyone here a man except us?" And I was like, I didn't even notice. Like I didn't even notice. And I said, well, I don't know. She goes, I thought women were 50%. And I was like, okay, I don't know where they went, but they're not here. Now, women are a lot in transactional law. They're here. We're here. But we're in different rooms, right? And none of the rooms are to be, minimized. Like, good for you for choosing those rooms. But in these rooms, like the question, I think the proper question to me is, how do you manage litigation with that? First of all, I think you need to understand your kids will be fine. Like, I recognize that now. I remember a mom told me that when my kid was like in third grade. She was like, Rena, he's going to be fine. He's not going to remember whether you missed that one Mother's Day at school. I remember I missed one Mother's Day at school, and it just broke my heart. And my friend was there, and she took pictures, and she FaceTimed me, and she's like, don't worry, I hugged him. You need your village. You need your village everywhere.
I just made a post on CA Bar Styles Instagram because my son just turned 15, my oldest one. And when I took the bar, he was 6 months old. And I was thinking about the guilt that I had leaving him. I had hired a nanny. And I think help is a really big category as well. Like, you need help. It's okay to have help. You can't always do it like the village you're talking about, right? And so I remember thinking, like, he's going to hate me. He's going to, like, he was 6 months old. And I would be driving to the library to study going, I'm the worst mother ever. He's going to hate me for the rest of my life. He's going to think I abandoned him. He's going to have abandonment issues. When I ask him now, do you remember me studying for the bar for 6 months and literally not being there to wake up with you or put you to sleep? No. Are you proud of what I've done? Yes. Yeah, I'm really proud of you, Mom. God, why is this becoming like an emotion?
I'm going to cry too, Shana.
And here's the thing. You can be a kick-ass anything as a mom and be a great attorney and own a business. You may not do everything at 100%, although I think, Marina, you probably are close to that, but you can do it quite well. And your kids are going to be proud of you. You don't abandon your kids. You're there. You're present. You balance it. And it is I always call it the plate of life. And you look at how much you have on that plate. And of course, the priority is, for some people, it's God and then themselves. But when it comes to family, it's always going to be high up there for most people, but it doesn't mean it has to be so high at the sacrifice of your own needs and wants as a mom or a dad. And especially for moms, because I do think we take on most of that plate. There are some amazing dads that do as well, but we just handle, we juggle a lot. We can do it, but we need to have support not only of our peers, but of society as well. Because, we went from like the feminist mystique, right? Of like women need to get out into the workforce and just work and, get out of the kitchen. And then there was like this movement to go back a lot during COVID, right? It's like moms were the ones for the most part staying at home with the kids on the remote learning. And that was freaking, oh my God, a nightmare. But now we talk about the balance of it all. And so I don't think there's a perfect formula. I think you have to find what really works for you and is going to make you happy. And obviously you've done that. Now, I also see on social media, you travel a lot. I mean, you're always out. So that's part of your balance too.
Yeah. So I want to talk about one other thing that I think is important, and that is our role as wives, girlfriends, whatever. I think it's important for us to articulate our needs to our partners, right? For the most part, men will do what we need if we learn to articulate it. One of the because I do a lot of coaching of other women, and I'll say, what do you want? Well, I want to sleep more. Okay, how are we going to do that? How are we going to do that? Have you said to him or her, your partner, I need this? Have you said? Right. And so I think it's so important to learn because my husband's amazing.
Healthy communication. Yes.
And know in your own head what it is that you need to be okay, and rebalance that. And I rebalance my internal balance, like every day, probably.
Right.
Some days I'll say to my husband, hey, I feel very disconnected. And some days I'll be like, hey, I feel too connected. I need a minute. You know what I mean? I need too many minutes.
I love that you're saying this, because it's literally what I'm going through right now, where it's like, yes, that you're right. And that's so raw, and that is so honest to say that, because I think it's okay, like especially a 27-year marriage. I've been married almost 20 years. You're going to have the connectivity sometimes and sometimes not, and sometimes need a little space. And that's part of the balance too.
I have, like, in my world, I have so many penises. Like, all my boys are boys. I have my husband.
Jesus, some days you have 2 boys, right?
Boys, yeah. Some days I'm like, and my whole world is men, right?
Yes.
So some days I'm like, okay, I'm gonna need a minute, please. And also your girlfriends. I walk with my friends almost every night. So we walk for about an hour almost every night. That's very important. Getting back to travel. So COVID did us a great favor, and that it made us very, very virtual. I can access anything virtually from my phone, from my iPad, from my car, from my laptop. So I literally travel probably 8-9 weeks a year, like a lot.
Wow.
And my secret to that is this. I don't take trials in July or December. Set up times like that, and then just book it. Whatever it is, just book it. Always confirm they're going to have good internet. But I like being on it. I like not being disconnected. I do respond so quickly. I can get a complaint filed in 2 days if I need to.
Wow.
I can get emotional. My staff is amazing. And I think that not getting disconnected is so important. Like, for me, that's what makes me feel okay. I have other people who are completely the opposite. They can't relax unless they do. And that's okay.
I mean, I like to check the emails. I'll just kind of peruse them, but then the phone's going away and I'm getting to the beach. But
everybody does
everyone has their own thing. Yes. But I think that's really commendable that you do check in, and it shows more and more of your passion and love for just not even work, but obviously what's coming through also is your love of life. And being able to really juggle it all. I mean, you really are the epitome of that. And I was reading through some of your reviews, but the reviews were amazing. And one theme, which I know you're going to laugh at, was she's a shark, right? And so we talk about this concept. Everyone, right, clients or people looking for lawyers are like, I need a shark. What does that mean to you, the shark mentality of a lawyer? And would you really classify yourself as that?
So that's such an interesting question. I'm so glad you asked it. I always, people always ask us for shark attorneys, and I always ask them, like, what are you looking for? So I think that what clients mean for me is that it matters to me whether we get this right? I'm not here to go to trial if I don't think you're right. But if you're right, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you're fairly compensated. And I'm going to spend time with the client so that they understand what I understand. So that I treat every client, and this is what the training I give my staff is, I treat every client how I would want my mom treated.
Love that.
I would want her to understand the process. I would want her not to suffer stress as a result of dealing with my office. Litigation is stressful, right?
Yeah, very.
So I think that because of that, a lot of my clients often, like right now, I'm having this issue. Clients will be like, okay, Marina, let's settle. I'm like, no, no. And so I'm like, let's just hang tight. There's a little more here. And I want to go to trial. I don't get to try as many cases as I want.
No.
I tried it during COVID, but I don't get to try as many as I want because I think that I do the work. I do have good clients because I've selected them. I told them what's going on. I don't think being a shark means being antagonistic to defense counsel. And I don't think it means being antagonistic to the defendant. It doesn't mean that.
It's not about coming in there like Rambo cop.
Like if you watch some of my depots, I've been known to, be not overly nice, but my job is not to be nice. My job is to get the information that I need. And if you're going to come into
the truth in the sharkness.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Whatever you want to call it. Yeah. There's a little
for sure.
And that's something that you own. And I think that there's a balance between being overly aggressive where you can't get anything done with opposing counsel and being somewhere in the middle. And I'm sure it's a skill that you could probably teach at this point. But I also think you kind of have it or you don't. And obviously you have it. But I have met attorneys that are just not meant to do litigation, and they try, but they just don't have it in them. I'm not saying that they can't maybe learn that skill set or get the mentorship to be trained, right, to get better at it, but it is something about maybe having a little more street smarts, and really knowing people well and being able to evaluate, and of course knowing the law. When you meet the sharks, you kind of know it and you feel the energy, at least in my experience.
I think you're right, but I think it's about chasing your joy,
Mm-hmm.
right? What makes you feel joyful? Like if I could teach the legal community anything, it would be chase your joy.
Mm-hmm.
If I could young lawyers, if it bring, like, for example, my older son is a third year at UC Riverside right now, and he's going to be pre-law.
Mm-hmm.
He's not, he doesn't have, you know what I mean? He
Yes.
may or may not be a litigator, but I think he will do great as general counsel. Like, I'm not a person that likes meetings about meetings about meetings.
Right.
I can't sit there and listen to a bunch of,
yes.
right? So I'm just like, oh, I can't.
Right.
But people have more patience for that, right? So I think the important thing is to understand who you are, to be truthful to who you are,
yes.
and what brings you joy. And if you're not joyful, change it.
Yes.
The legal community in California is so robust. I mean, we have so many different options.
So many. And I think that's such a big point. And we touched upon this earlier, right? When you were figuring out where you were going to practice. And I thought I was going to be a family law attorney. If you are graduating law school or starting that journey, just know it doesn't have to be decided upon. You likely will not know exactly what you want to go into until you start practicing in that area. I remember in my first family law case, the mom, obviously they were getting divorced, and the mom bursted into my office because the child was a child actor, and the husband wanted to give the kid a haircut. And she was having an absolute conniption. And I looked at myself in the mirror after that and I went, I'm not made for this. I thought I was made for this, but I can't deal with this level of anxiety and stress, because it's very stressful, that area of law. You don't need to make a definitive decision right away. You can find it on your journey and then fall into and dabble with a couple different things. Kind of veering off, but we do talk about law and life. So what's the secret to success? It sounds like you've had a pretty wonderful marriage.
I think the secret for us has been that we've been together since high school.
Wow.
So, yeah. So we've been together a really long time. And my husband is incredibly supportive of me.
And then
And there's so many issues in marriage over long term, right? Money is an issue. Daycare is an issue. Childcare, I mean. How do you handle the children? Who does what? And my husband and I have always said, like, everybody has a jurisdiction, right? Like there's things I do, there's things that he does. And we know
it's not a competition.
Yeah, no. And
right.
It can't be, because you have to know who does what. But it's also so important to communicate. And it's
right.
so important to tell your partner, what you want, but also hear them. Sex and intimacy is so important in a long-term marriage. Like, make time, ladies, men too, everybody. Go away. Like, take time alone. Like, my favorite time is with my husband alone.
Me too.
And I love traveling with my kids, and I love traveling with our friends, and I love doing all these things. I love going to the theater, whatever, but I also love having tacos with him alone.
If you're both especially busy, like my husband and I are both business owners. So if you're both running around like chickens with your head cut off and you don't communicate right healthy, which you're talking about, and then you don't spend time together, you can't just have a connection based on kids. That's a different type of connection. So you create a family together, but you still have to have connection as a couple together, and be kind to one another. And I agree with that. And I think nowadays more than ever, you have so many tools as a person to really work on yourself. If you feel like, I'm not being that kind, I need to communicate better, you can listen to a great podcast on communication skills from world-renowned psychologists. You don't necessarily even need to spend any money, maybe just a Spotify account, and work on it. So you got to put the work in. But, my final thought is, what a career. And I can't wait to see the next chapter. Anything that you think you're going to branch off and do?
Yeah, I taught for a long time, and the program at Valley College closed. I probably will. I don't always have the time to do everything.
I'd want to be in your class.
I know. I've had people in my class for many years that I'm fun when I teach. I want to do nonprofit. This is a secret, Shana. I'm telling you the down low. I want to work with nonprofits who teach reading to low-income areas.
That's so beautiful.
Right? My husband's a high school teacher here in Van Nuys. He's a specialist. We need to do better about teaching literacy to young kids, at-risk kids.
Yeah.
To me, reading is critical, right? Because if you can read, you can accomplish anything in the world. So I think that we need to teach reading, and not just reading, but a love for reading. I imagine a world where I can sit with a bunch of little kids in an area like Greytown where I grew up and just teach them to love to read. I don't know how that works.
I love that. And I can't wait to see you do that. And I would love to participate in that as well. So if you start something like that or do it, I would love to come on in because, my son had a really hard time loving to read. One was reading Dr. Seuss front to back at 3-4 years old. And the other one couldn't read a book at 8 years old, like to save his life. It was all basketball, sports, this. So
was it because you were working?
It was for sure because it was working, right? I am so excited to have everyone hear this podcast today because we touched on so many different topics. I really enjoyed talking with you today, and I'm so excited to get this out there, and I hope to see you in person soon.
Yes, Shana, thank you so much. Thank you for having me and for talking to me about, I think, these very important topics and for getting people licensed.
Yeah. Then maybe I'll send them your way.
Sounds good.
To be a mentor. Who knows? All right. Have a great one. Thanks, Marina.
Bye.
You've been listening to Law Life, a podcast about navigating law, life, and everything in between with host Shana Karpeles. Thank you everyone for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for episode updates. For more information on the show or preparing for the California bar exam, you can visit us on YouTube at CA Bar Style.